All right, so we have Sierra Smith back here, and she's been hearing me complain a lot on social media about how I'm tired of doing my yard and cutting grass at my house, and how I feel like my primary residence is not an asset for me. It's somewhat of a liability. And so we're going to talk about this. So, is your home an asset or a liability? And so, welcome Sierra Smith back.
Hey, thanks for having me. I am excited to have this conversation because I saw you post on Threads, I believe. You probably put it somewhere else too, but that the biggest lie that you had believed was that your home, your primary residence was an asset. And I was like, oh, okay. I know that I'm gonna also have the opposite opinion of Robert Kiyosaki here. So I'm in the hot seat, I feel like, but that's all
Uh,
right.
All right, okay. I want to hear your take on it because everybody hears me complaining about it. So let's see what your viewpoint on this is.
Okay, so I know that people love to make these great generalized statements like your home is not an asset or your primary residence is an asset. And I think obviously that it depends on the circumstances, right? But I think generally speaking, most people's primary residence is an asset. So I'm going to say that because at least the way Robert Kiyosaki defines an asset is something that's putting cash in your pocket, right? And I think for the last decade, anyways, most people were putting money in their pocket by buying a primary residence because it would be less than rent. And therefore, money was being not technically cash flowing, but ultimately, if you're paying less than market rent for your primary residence, that is putting money in your pocket.
I agree with that. I think that's I think it's how they say it's very location based. So especially like in Hawaii, and I tell a lot of people this all the time that it's probably a better idea to rent in Hawaii because the cost of rent is lower than what your mortgage payment would be. So from that standpoint, even if you bought a home here, you could be renting someplace a lot cheaper. So as far as like you're saying, money that either put in your pocket or automatic savings, it definitely makes a lot more sense to rent a property in the beginning in Hawaii until you can build up some wealth to maybe buy a home that you want where you have other sources of income that's paying for your mortgage. So I guess we do somewhat agree on it as far as your primary residence being an asset. I just feel as if too many people kind of almost like an easy way out, I guess. Like they buy a primary residence and then now they get super comfortable. And I fell into that, right? I got a primary residence and I looked at it, oh, my parents did this for 30, 40 years and now their home is worth this much. And they seem to be doing good with how much equity they have. And I feel like that's kind of the trap that some of us fall into is we get a primary residence and then you just think, okay, 30 years from now it's going to be worth X amount, and I don't have to do anything, kind of in between for those 30 years. And I guess that's more where I'm trying to push people to look at it like kind of outside the box to where, opportunity costs and how much rent may cost in your area compared to a mortgage payment. And that's where I kind of try to help people say, hey, your primary residence really isn't that much of an asset if it's not generating any income for you.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna guess anyways, that in Hawaii, it's probably not as common for people to move around from one house to another, like once they do get their primary residence. Is that right?
Yeah, that's kind of why I also feel like, Hawaii, we're very unique. Yeah, we're on an island. So we're somewhat in a bubble a little bit also too. So I think I always talk about this, how I never would have ever thought there were houses, in the mainland that you could purchase for, 100,000, 200,000, and the rent would be, 1,500, 2,000. You grow up here in Hawaii and you just look around and everything is like $1 million. So you
Mhm.
just kind of you think that's the norm. and you don't realize that there's these other places where people are renting out properties more than their mortgage payment. And I think
Mhm.
that's, like I said, it's kind of like a kind of like a little bubble that we're in, and we don't realize it. And sometimes um, you just kind of fall into what everybody else is doing, and everyone's trying to get that money for a down payment for their primary residence. And like you're talking about not moving as often. And yeah, I think that's super valid argument there. And I think the only reason people are moving now is because the cost of living is so high. And a lot of people are like, you know what, I'm never going to get ahead by staying here. And, they take other opportunities in the mainland, and then, they come back here and they retire. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking at doing now.
Oh, that makes sense. And I think too, like, I mean, it is really common here. I guess that's part of my argument on why the primary residence can feel like an asset, is because if you are moving, which we've done pretty regularly, uh, the cashing in on the appreciation, especially after fixing a house up over the course of 2 years, has been one of the greatest financial decisions that we could have made. And if we hadn't bought a primary residence in college, we wouldn't have been springboarded into the financial success that we have now. So that primary residence definitely made all the difference, more so than a college degree did, for sure. So that decision was definitely turned out to be an asset, whether or not we intended for it to be in the beginning. So I think a lot of people can stumble into utilizing it. And I think even in Hawaii, I would say too, if you're intending to use the equity in your house down the road, then you could still look at it as an asset in the long run. But if you're buying it just and not thinking about using the equity, but just thinking like, oh, well, I'll have the paid off mortgage in 30 years, then I don't know that would count as an asset. I would agree with you on that.
Yeah, so you mentioned, using the equity, and I think that is actually what a lot of the local people here are doing, or have been doing, until the rates maybe started going up. But a lot of people were taking advantage of the very popular or favorable type of home equity lines of credit that the local banks offered out here. So a lot of people were, there's different names to a different strategy. It's called the sweep strategy, or infinite not infinite banking, but velocity mortgage, or velocity financing. So people are trying to use HELOCs to pay down their mortgage quicker, because for a short period of time, the HELOC rates out here, you could get them probably like 1 point something for like 2 years. And
Oh,
then people,
wow.
yeah, so people were just jumping from bank to bank. So that would be like a teaser rate, and then they would just go to one bank, get the teaser rate for 2 years, then they would move their HELOC to the next bank, use that teaser rate, and that's what people were doing. So they were getting like lines of credit for like under 2%. And like you're mentioning, so some people were using it to focus on having this lower interest payment on their so they would basically take away their home mortgage and then turn it into a full line of credit. But now
Mhm.
that you're on simple interest, people are just paying the same amount, but because their interest rate went lower now, they were just paying their mortgage down quicker.
Right.
And there's others that were using the equity to reinvest, and like you said, they were buying other properties, and that's super beneficial to why I like to say I think home ownership is super important. Whether
Yeah.
you just got to get on the property ladder, and you can call your primary residence an asset or a liability or whatnot, but I think there's no denying that just getting on the property ladder, there's so much benefits. And I think we can agree on that at least.
Oh, yeah. I love the way you worded that. Home ownership is definitely the way to go. Whether
Yeah, I
you're
think,
living in it or house hacking it, or just using it as an investment, that I think that is, I mean, like I said, if we hadn't purchased a house, I don't know what could have springboarded us any better than that. So I think it's super important.
yeah. So as much as I complain about it, I still think it's super beneficial. It's been super helpful. I think why you hear me complain about it so much is I think it, you know, not looking at it as an asset actually can accelerate your process to becoming financially free, or building wealth. Because I think a lot of people don't agree with me, but like I said, in Hawaii it makes more sense to rent than it does to purchase a home. And I think if you're able to look at it from that standpoint, you build your wealth first, and then you buy that dream home, or that home that you want to live in Hawaii, and then you're having these other sources of income, paying for that property.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then, if you're renting, you don't have to mow the grass. So win-win.
Yes, and that's something that's one of my things that I just can't stand. Because like my thing is too, like I tell people, when you're younger, you always call it, you're doing the yard. But as you get older, you call it, you're working in the garden, or you're gardening. And I think, that's where I'm at right now. It's not enjoyable for me, being out in the yard or doing the lawn. But at some point it could be, could be very peaceful, and it's just something you're going to do. But right now it's just like, it's grass, I gotta cut it, get rid of it. It doesn't, there's no benefit almost to me.
Oh man, here, like, well, not here in Tennessee, but where am from in the Midwest. I mean, the lawn care it is the pride and joy of many homeowners. They want the diagonal lines, they rake the sand into it to get it all even. I'm sure that,
Yeah, I would be kicked out of that neighborhood. I would
yeah,
be
you would not make it there.
Well, so, and see, for me, I was telling you my secrets. I try to do it when it's windy, so that all the grass just blows away. And it sounds like your husband, like, he's a little more meticulous, and he's trying to. What do you say? He has a gravel road, but yeah, he's trying to blow away all
Yeah, he
the grass.
blows the grass back into the yard so that it's not, on the road. But
See,
we're out in the country. I don't know why.
he would make it in those neighborhoods. They'd be like, oh, see, he fits right in over here. I would get
I
kicked
would
out.
like, I mean, because we have a couple acres. So I'm like at the point where I feel like we need goats or something to just keep it down on a big part of it so that we're not having to spend a couple hours on the yard. But one day.
Yeah. Well, let's see. What time is it? Do we have time? Yeah, we can just talk real quick. If people didn't notice or haven't followed Sarah's page, after we chatted last week, there was a tree that fell down or got knocked down on her property. So why don't you kind of fill us in on that a little bit?
Yeah, so karma really got me because I was making fun of hurricanes and we were talking about tornadoes and I referred to them as land hurricanes and said we get them occasionally around here, which we didn't necessarily get a tornado, but we did get straight line winds, I think that night or the next day, and it knocked over a giant tree in our backyard, landed on the roof. Luckily did not break a window or anything, but I did post a reel of it on my Instagram if you want to check it out, or I think it's on my YouTube shorts as well,
Yeah.
of that massive tree. And this is the third time we have dealt with a tree falling on a property. So that's kind of what I said in my short, was that, I'm 3 for 3 on trees falling, because when we bought our rental property, we had a massive tree fall 1 week after we closed on it, and we had to deal with that. And then at our house in Kansas, we had a giant limb fall out of a tree that was in the front yard. And so we have dealt with a lot of trees, but I would still buy real estate. It has not been, it's not been expensive for us to deal with these trees, at least. So it hasn't been a damper on the investment at all. But I don't know why I can't
It's
get around. The
because
next property has no trees. That's what I'm going to say. The next property better have no trees.
it's because you're making fun of the hurricane.
I know. I shouldn't
Well,
have done
I mean, just to clarify, I couldn't come up with the word tornado. So I was like, something like a hurricane. And then she was making fun of me about, oh, yeah, all the land hurricanes that passed through Tennessee and everything. So after that, that's why the tree fell, because she was making fun of it. So,
that. I know.
but, let's real quick, kind of got off topic, but just what would be, I guess, and I'm sure you're going to answer the same as me, but we're talking about home ownership, but what would be the best way to make your or your home, your primary residence, an asset? What would be the easiest way?
The house hack.
Yeah.
That's going to be the easiest way.
Yeah.
For sure. You can fix and flip. And I feel, I say fix and flip over the course of a couple of years. You can fix something up and then
Oh, the
cash
live in
out on the
flip.
second
Yeah, the
move.
live in flip. Yeah.
Yeah, live and flip. But I wouldn't say that's as easy as house hacking.
Oh yeah. When I see you doing all your renovations and stuff, I'm like, oh, house hacking is much easier.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, like I said, I think we're going to agree on that. Definitely. How I haven't been able to do it. But if I was starting my journey over again, that's definitely what I would look into starting. It is finding a property that I could house hack where I live in one unit and am able to rent out another unit or multiple units to either hopefully still generate some income or at least reduce my living expense and kind of reduce my biggest expense that I have. But Sierra, it's been fun. We're gonna come up with some new topics for next week. Something I can maybe, but you don't complain about a lot of stuff, so I can't really find anything you're complaining about on social
You
media.
can get me on
But
something. I'm sure I have something.
but we'll do this again next week. And thanks for coming on again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.